Some insider knowledge that will help you overcome and strategize in the cutthroat world of real estate. Now, here are your hosts, John and Roberto.
Welcome, everybody. Boroughs and Burbs, number 127, leap year. This only happens once every 4 years. We figured it was a pretty special date, so we were looking for a very special guest, and we found him. CEO of Douglas Elliman, Scott Durkin. We're going to ask him all the hard questions about our industry. We're going to find out where we are, where we're going, all this controversy. We're going to ask him the hard questions. But first, I want to introduce our sponsor right here, Grace Farms. Now, Scott, Roberto, if you don't know about Grace Farms, you really should come up here and check it out. 80 acres in New Canaan, Connecticut. It's about 1 hour outside of New York City. And they have the world famous Pritzker Prize winning river building that you see on the screen there. And they host forums and conferences for world-class organizations. This weekend, look at this, check this out. They're doing a conference on modernism, and it's a documentary on Elliot Noyes, one of the Harvard 5 mid-century modern architects who was working in New Canaan. And Elliot Noyes is famous for doing a great deal of mid-century modern industrial design, not just architecture. Anyway, they're celebrating him this weekend. I have tickets. I hope to see both of you there. Join me. So with that, I'd like to start by talking about our guest, Scott Durkin. Here you see him on the screen. This is his official PR photograph, but I wasn't going to just stop there. I found some other pictures. So wait, let's see. And I got to move this down on the screen. Yep, there we go. I found the photo when he was named CEO. Here it is in the Real Deal at the desk of Scott Durkin. And they interviewed him on dressage riding, buying fictional floor plans, and giving up modern dance. Then I found his most recent interview with Real Talk, on the show Real Talk with his friend Steve Cohen in New York. He's been featured on Power Lunch recently, and he's on Leaders, New York City. And I found an interview with on your strategic leadership. And I guess with that, I'm going to.
Can I just say something? Can I say something?
Yeah.
I have. Throughout my career, I've heard Scott Durkin, Scott Durkin, Scott Durkin, and everybody says, "Oh," and they don't just go like, "Oh, Scott's a good guy." They go, "Oh, Scott, do you know Scott?" And I was like, "I don't know Scott." So I'm very excited to learn about the man behind the myth.
Right. I mean, I just showed you all of his press clippings, but do we really know Scott Durkin? And do we really know what he's all about? And we could either go in the, give him a lob and talk about dressage, and we could talk about, fictional floor plans, or we could really get into I'm hoping to get into the nitty gritty of real estate in New York and the expansion of Douglas Elliman into all of these other territories over the last 4 years. It's been an unprecedented streak of expansionism. So maybe we'll start with that. Scott Durkin.
Hey.
Welcome.
Very happy to have you on the show.
It's so great to be here. Wow. I wondered when I would be on your show.
It took us 4 years to extend the invite, but boy, we're going to make it worthwhile now. So
great.
Where are you now?
Where am I? I just came from the west coast of Florida, from Sarasota, to now I'm in West Palm Beach.
And you have an office, a new office in Sarasota, don't you?
We do. We absolutely do, on Main Street. We are opening it on April 29th. So yeah, we're super excited. It's a great town.
And what are you doing? Picking out drapes? Are you inspecting the troops? What's going on in Sarasota this week?
Well, this week, today and tomorrow, I actually took 2 days off, and I went to fetch my best friend of almost 92 years to bring her over to the East Coast of Florida for some fun. So I'm actually just taking 2 vacays today and tomorrow. First time
All right.
this year.
Well,
Let's
that's
just
awful
get
nice of you
right-
to interrupt that time to be with us.
Oh,
so
you
we
guys are
appreciate it.
fun. This is great.
All right. So I'm going to start with a screen and I'm going to show Elliman regions. Now, I think when you arrived 4 years ago, was it 4 years ago, took
8.
the range. How many years?
Well,
Eight.
it's almost 8. Yeah.
Okay. How many regions were you in when you began at Elliman?
Well, let's see. It would be New York, California, California, Connecticut, and Florida.
Okay. And now look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 of them are on the screen now. And you're expanding in places like Florida with new offices, it feels like every quarter. So
Right.
can you talk about the expansion and really the strategy behind? Because some of our competitors have decided to be everywhere. Some of them have decided to be really to focus on just the East Coast.
Mhm.
Why? But this is neither everywhere and nor just the East Coast. So what goes into this expansion strategy?
Well, I think it makes sense when we tell you how we do it. We follow our clients. So if a client has a home in Houston and then needs a home in Naples or a ski house in Aspen, we are generally there for them, whether it be the agent in Houston that's referring them to the other 2 markets. So we follow the client. Our national average price is 1.6 million. And we make sure that that's something that we can sustain, and we can find the right cities that match up to the other cities where they may be owning homes. So the average ultra high net worth individual has between 3 and 5 homes. And so we like to be in all of those neighborhoods that make sense to us, and that it's really not a science. You look up on the boards in the airports and see what direct flights are arriving here. And you can really pretty much figure out what you need to do, and you can almost track them in terms of how they migrate. Florida, Hamptons, New York, Miami, Palm Beach to LA. They move around.
So what's the strategy of establishing a foothold in one of those places? You decide, hey, I'm going to be in Austin. Do you go and you scout out Austin and you find a franchise of some sort that's already established and you try to partner with or buy them out and then begin at that point? How does that go? How does that happen?
That sounds like the right thing. And that's what we used to do. That's what I did when I worked at Realogy and Anywhere. Did you know I worked Anywhere? It's a funny name, isn't it? But we would buy the whole company. We would integrate it into the present one. And if we didn't have one, we'd open up that company and change the flag the next week or the next 6 months or a year. But now you don't require that, because 10% of the salespeople now sell 90% of the listings out there. Used to be 80-20. Used to be 20% of the salespeople sold 80%. It's very tight now. So you don't need to buy the whole company, because many times you're buying over half of the company is not productive. So now we sort of search out the best solo agents and the best teams that might be leading the market, and we start there. And I have to say, we're happy to note that many times where we've opened, they've approached us. So they've planted the seed first. And that's always a nice thing, because there's nothing better than people wanting you and coming to you and seeing if it's right for your market or for your region.
So if I have a successful franchise in Chicago and I see you at the airport, I better talk to my top people.
It happened. Funny you said that. Chicago called one day and I picked up, and they couldn't believe that I had picked up my own phone. The deal didn't end up working out, but it may work out in the future. But yeah, that's exactly how it happens.
So there's got to be
DC. We exist in DC because one of the founders of DC saw me speak at Inman, Las Vegas.
So there's probably on your whiteboard markets that you'd like to be in, and opportunities out there, but you're just waiting for the right people to launch those markets. I mean, I'm looking at Sally Daly there on the screen, and I have to say, okay, so why Vero Beach? You know, I mean, well, they've got a direct flight into New York, and that's one of the places that New Yorkers want to be. But you don't move into Vero Beach unless you have an A+ partner there to launch, right?
There we found Sally. You're right. And Vero made a lot of sense to us because many of our agents that are New York Quag Vero Beach, and Quag can use, I always say Ulster. I never get the airport right. It's the airport near, oh boy, it's in Long Island and I'm drawing a blank, but it's that airport in MacArthur, and they can get to Florida from MacArthur. And so, yes, it made complete sense to us to find, and many agents from our firm and other firms do come into Vero Beach. And I know Mary Beth Adelson from Douglas Elliman, she's got a place there, and her parents and her family in Vero Beach. So that became a nice northern piece from Jupiter to Vero, and the in between there. So that made complete sense for us.
And so where does it end in Florida? I mean, everybody is talking about Florida. Florida is the highest spot of real estate growth, luxury growth in the country. We're going to talk about all your new development projects in Miami and up and down the east coast of Florida in a moment. But where does it end? Do you end up in Orlando? Do you end up in Tallahassee one day? Or do you say, no, 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 no. You know, I really just need to be in the best cities, the creme de la creme. We're a luxury brand. We really don't need to be everywhere in Florida.
You know, I think you're right. For instance, we just opened up in 30A. Now, a lot of people don't know where that is. It's up near Destin. It's that Panhandle area. It's beachfront, and it's absolutely stunning. The most beautiful beach and water you've ever seen. Homes that are from $3 to $20 million, and none of us had really heard of that until we were approached by them, and it made sense because the price point was really high. The client was a client we know. It could be a client from Texas or a client from Massachusetts. You know, they come from everywhere. So we thought it was a smart thing to do. Will we be opening in Orlando? I don't know. Jacksonville, maybe. We did Ponte Vedra, which is, you know, east of there and north of Vero. We are, I told you, Sarasota. We have St. Pete. Yeah, who knows? Florida is the hottest spot we've ever had, the entire state, and it's run by my great colleague Jay Parker and his team. And I think it being a low tax state and the weather being pretty great all year round, except for the hurricane season, yeah, it makes complete sense. And we've never had. We never thought Florida would be this way. I remember when I first came to the company, Florida was just chugging along. You know, it didn't have all of the new development that we have now, and we have billions of new development in Florida, from Miami all the way up the coast and over to Naples and Sarasota now. So it's to be continued, and I think, John, it has a lot of potential. I just drove across. I think my drive was an hour across sugarcane fields.
We did a show last week in West Palm Beach. It was probably my favorite show in 4 years. And we showed a picture of sugarcane fields, and we asked Randy, and we said, how long before these sugarcane fields get plowed over and Stephen Ross builds a 25-story tower on those? And they laughed and they said, oh, those sugarcane fields they're a bit further out of town. We're really only building, you know, within, I don't know, 5 miles of Flagler. But I think it's coming, right? I mean, it didn't seem like there was anything to check the ambition, the current ambition in West Palm Beach. When they take out billboards in Times Square saying, come on down to Wall Street South, you know that they are firing on all 8 cylinders, and they mean business, and they are
yeah, they're on fire.
Filing up those fields.
Yeah, and they can build much faster here. The building codes are different. The requirements for the actual construction of the building, I mean, they really only have one season, right?
Right.
Warm. And although when it does get cold down here, you get cold. Like a 50-degree day, you feel inside your home, you feel a little bit cooler than what we're feeling now up there in New York. But it's okay. It's pretty much guaranteed great weather.
Scott, with regards to the expansion, is it essential to have a brick and mortar office? Like, for example, John mentioned Orlando, and you think about the way we conduct business. I rarely ever have my clients in my office. They're rarely coming into my office, and everything is virtual. I mean, could you have a presence in Orlando and some of these secondary and Knoxville, Tennessee, things like that, and not necessarily have to go through the expense of having a brick and mortar like location? Is that essential?
I don't think so at all. And I think sometimes it looks wasteful. And when it's a big piece of retail space in a village or a town and it's empty, you begin to think, why is it there? For us, I know, for instance, we have presence in Ocala, which is the second horse capital of the country right now. And Stephen Somel, who's one of a champion jumper rider, who's an agent at Douglas Elliman, he's doing business from there, and we do not have boots on the ground there yet. So it's completely possible. We have a division within Elliman called Elliman Everywhere. So as long as you're licensed in the state you're in, we will help you do business in that state without the requirements of a manager or a branch or a bricks and mortar. And it's the world is digital. We saw that happen while we were home during the pandemic. What happened to our business? When's the last time we've been to a closing? They're now done completely without us, and we're able to do things that we do well and get out there and do other things. But yeah, we can be anywhere at any time. And so that's, I think, one of the beauties of having our company, having our online training, having the availability of all the management, but not having to be in front of you. Because like you said, most of the time you're not in front of us.
Yeah.
Talk about how the company is organized, because you just talked about Jay Parker, and what I'm wondering is, what is the connectedness of New York City with 100-year reputation to where the brand was built, and each of these regions, Texas, Florida, California, Aspen, each so different, with some connectivity to New York. They're the places that New Yorkers also go. So, is there a relatively high degree of autonomy in the marketing, in the PR, and the approach to the real estate market in each of these regions?
You hit the nail on the head especially about Florida, for instance. When you go to Florida, you run into everyone from New York, right? It's just like running into people in the Hamptons during the summer. But now it's a full-time place for people for second, third, or fourth home. And many are residents here now, obviously, to take advantage of the tax savings. So that I think that that makes sense there. And Texas does not have a strong relationship, for instance, to New York, but I think it does to California. And I think they each say hello to each other in a way that is pretty special. And I just think there's a lot of the same thing. I remember one of a top agent when I was growing up with Barbara Corcoran. Once someone said to me, well, what's the difference between a $500,000 home and a $5 million home? And the agent, who was very experienced, she said, a zero, and she said something that stuck with me, that money follows money. And don't ever forget that. And, you just, what happens within the management of our company is that we all have had sales careers, which is important. And if you've had that and you've done that, you know what you all go through every single day, and you know how important it is to get you the answer you need, or to get you something you need in terms of how to market your business, or do a deal, or make something, stick and go to contract. So we've been there already. So we have that special sort of bond between you, knowing that it's so important for us to have this happen quickly. We also are constantly in contact with each other at the high level of the regions, and we often can finish each other's sentences, and we have a special, special bond there as well. So I think you've got to love this business, because if you don't, it's not an easy business. I think, and I'm in my 33rd year. It's the hardest. This is the hardest.
You starting to get the hang of it, Scott?
Yeah, I think I got it, but no, no, no. This is super, super hard. This is the hardest I've ever seen it.
All right, I want to pick up on one thing you said about this as a career, as a sales career, and about it getting harder. It also occurs to me that it's getting harder. I think that when my mother joined the business, and I'll just pick on her, back in 1983, she said, okay, I like this area. I think I can sell real estate because I'm a people person and I like the product. And now to ask her to go take training in negotiation skills, go take technology training. Mom, I need you to get out there and put yourself out there on social media. I mean, and the list goes on. And Mom, we're going to need to order a Matterport for your next video. I mean, I think that the business has never been accelerating faster than it is now, and the expectations of an agent have never been higher. So can you talk about just exactly how difficult it is, and is it enough to be a salesman?
Well, it's so difficult that it's interesting, John, that I can look at you through this lens right now and see you and see your signature bow tie, and see the background of your life. I can see your whole aesthetic. I love everything you guys stand for, and I would want to do business with you. I think a lot of people forget that when you come into this industry, I know that it's really great to have really fabulous clothes and look super sexy and built up and hot, but don't forget where your focus should be. And like, you bring in wonderful pieces to your business, like you bring in the architecture, you bring in the environment, you bring the location. It's for you, it's all centered around the piece of real estate. It's not centered around you or your ego. And I think that's super important, that people often forget, like they put themselves first and the listing second, or the lack of the listing second. If you're super green, you've got to be with someone who isn't. I think it's better to have part of something than nothing of nothing, So I think right now, if you're coming into the market as a new agent, you've got to have some signature, something that sets you apart from the rest. I think if you're sort of burnt out and you don't know how to restart yourself, if you've had a fabulous career, then start talking about it, change your wardrobe, change your hair, do something. If you're not on social media, I'm sorry to say, you're going to be last in line. There's no question.
There's a little bit of ego there with John, just so you know. Just a little.
I'm okay with that. You can tell. I mean, we all reference him in terms of his wonderful. Usually you're in a great car.
What I hear you saying, though, is, some of your competitors, some of the major firms have led with technology. They said, this is a technology-centric business, and we have the best. And it's not just one of the major firms is leading with technology, and it's caused a lot of agents to say, well, wait a minute, what's my place in an industry dominated by technology, where the information is available to all my customers? They all know the complete history of every property, and the price per foot and price per assessment is all laid out to the public. What's my place? And so what I hear you saying is, it's not just a technology, not just a transactional business, that there's still a place for relationship selling.
Completely.
And then it's not independent of who's selling it. It's not just about the product, and the product is not a commodity.
Right. And you can't think that for instance, it's what you do with the technology that's important. TikTok's pretty phenomenal, but it's what the content you put on TikTok that's going to make it worth your while and worth the seller's while, or make you look like you know what you're doing with your business, or whatever it is. The technology is an engine in many ways, but what you put into it is, in terms of content and how you sell your own self, your own business, your own listings, and how you educate the public, and how likable you are. likability is enormous. Sorry, it is. And you just have to sort of curate your own life, your own business life, and obviously a lot of your personal life in terms of what you like, in terms of art and furniture and the environment and all of these things. People will certainly love what you love, and I think you'll want those people because you have a lot of the same things that you like about each other without realizing it. And then it helps with you getting them to stay with you. And it's the stickiness, you want people to continually go back to what you're posting. And we do that with you all. And we know that, and we use you as examples of how well it's done. And you can't do it sort of one or,
I don't want to be a TikTok star. I want to be a realtor. I just want to be there with my customer and his house or her house. I don't want to spend most of my time thinking about how to present myself on social media. I have to tell you that it bums me out, the expectation that I have to put myself out there on a daily basis and feed the algorithm. When I signed up for this business, it was to sell houses.
But what's great about you, though? I mean, your background was in technology, so you know exactly how to use it. And I don't think you're stroking your own ego. I think of you as selling high-end real estate first, and everything else comes second, and even your signature look. I think you're doing a great job.
Well, thanks. I'm heavily edited, as you know. So
but this is interesting, actually, because John, you mentioned we're talking about realtors and what it used to be. It used to be very siloed. This is what you do. Now the breadth of what you have to do is so much. And John, you have a team where you're not big on, you don't love doing showings. You love going to get the business. So you send someone else out to do the showings, although you should. I remember calling you once and you were like, these people aren't here yet, and I got a deadline, I got to go. You were so disgruntled that you were on a showing. but so so let's talk about teams, because you can, with all the different nuance that the job takes, you can have people that are your showers. You can have people that are your negotiators, people that are, whatever the roles might be, admin, etc. So Scott, teams never used to exist, and people used to fight them, and companies used to fight them and everything. And now it seems like almost, if you're not part of a team, it's either you can't compete or it's just something different. It's less personal. There's another person who's part of a big team at Brown Harris Stevens, and we were speaking to him. He hasn't done a showing in 8 years.
Wow.
8 years. I was stunned. And I told him, that's one of the things that I think I bring to my sellers. When I go on if I am in a negotiation, I understand the conversation that happened in the bedroom and in the kitchen with regards to all the different aspects of everything that happened. And that helps me in my negotiation. So can you talk to us a little bit about the dynamic of, are you super pro team in general, or just for some, or just talk to us about that a little bit?
Well, let me just say, for instance, the late Robbie Brown, who many of us knew. I remember that Robbie, when we worked together at Corcoran, he had a client who fired him because he said, "I saw you at the pitch, but I never saw you again." And that's stuck with me. And I think that, so for instance, John, if I saw all of your social, your videos and everything you do, and I went to see one of your listings and you weren't there, I would be really let down. And I think that happens a lot, where you've got huge teams or big teams and they've got a lot of listings to service. Just think of the odds of getting that person are lower because they have so much more volume. But then you can be a solo act and say to the seller, "I will never call someone else to find out what the buyer thought of your listing, because I will be showing them. No one else will show this listing but myself. And I am yours from the beginning to the end. And I have a track record to prove it. And I'm not handing it off to anyone else, because for instance, there may be a certain way of showing it. It may have a certain provenance. It may, be something that only you know about, or that your specialty is, or you studied this in school in mid-century architecture, whatever it is, that you can't just call that stuff in. So I think there's a way to get around it if you feel like you're threatened by the big teams, but yes, they can't be everywhere. The one person cannot be everywhere if they've got 25 or 35 listings. But 8 years without showing, wow.
Is that
John,
where
can
the-
I make a comment?
Yeah, sure.
Ellie?
I mean, I think there's, hi Scott, I think
Hi.
there's a bunch of ways to do this business successfully, and big teams work for some people, but we say we're a small team. So to Scott's point, I had somebody give me a review the other day, and we did a great job getting their house sold. And she said, when we interviewed other agents, they were Debbie Downers about the house and your enthusiasm, and she used the word evangelizing of the property was the X factor. But if you farm that out, you lose that. And then when I'm at the showings, to Scott's point, I can hear that wasn't our buyer, that was our buyer. Now 3 people have said the kitchen not being opened up is really a problem. We either need to take that wall down really fast or adjust price to comp for it, etc. So I think there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. We personally say not how, but who. And I try to pick people that are good at what I'm not. So I farm out my social. And I do videos like you do, but it's just like, you want to still be in the game, you got to lead, follow, or get out of the way. I'm horrified the way I look. I just do it. I don't care, but you're brilliant at it, John, but it's just part of how the business goes. But I think there are a bunch of different approaches, but I think don't underestimate passion over technology.
Yeah.
So all these agents,
we out there. Yeah.
We should not be getting nervous that AI and technology is going to take over our business.
I think, here's my 2 cents. Yes, it's happening at a fast clip, but let's see where it goes when it gets completely poisoned in a way where what's coming back to us may not be what we're expecting. And it could turn into something very different than what we're thinking. Not evil, but certainly something that other people will take advantage of in terms of how it's delivered. And there's a lot of people right now that are against it, a lot of countries, and you can't make it go away, but I think it's going to take a different form. And I would not myself, I guess I'm old school and I'm an Aries, I wouldn't rely on it at all.
I think it really gets to the one of the controversial points of our business right now that's winding its way through the courts, and I'll just leave it at that, which is a real question as to what value do we provide and how do we get paid to provide that value. I mean, that's a big question right now. They're saying well, if we can just put all these listings up on the internet, why are the commissions what they are? And I think realtors are really are struggling to sort of defend our value proposition. And I think it's causing a lot of people to leave the business. They said we peaked 2 years ago, and a lot of people are leaving the business, because the business is softening and there's not enough listings. But also, I think a lot of people are getting discouraged. Should they be? Should they? Is the future of this business discouraging?
I think the path is not, it's not discouraging, but you can't, it's not this isn't something that you can do quickly. You can learn quickly. Right now, if you've got a buyer and you have a buyer's agent and they may be interested in your listing as a listing agent, you really want that buyer's agent to knock it out of the park. They've never been so important than now. And the fact that they're being questioned and perhaps pushed aside by this AI crap, you can't. 25 years ago, we thought we were being taken. Our place is being taken by the internet. Didn't happen. I think this is a long shot, especially in the market we're in, and I think it would help. It would hurt property values everywhere, especially in the luxury market. If you had people just trolling on the internet for listings and just walking into a seller and an agent and not being qualified, not expecting to get your full price, because buyers generally offer much lower offers when they don't have an agent. They don't believe in the value. There's so many factors here that could just collapse. The buyer's agent now is going to be, I think, the star of the show when it comes to getting these listings sold, as well as when you've got tough inventory, and you've got people that want these listings, and you've got off market and quiet whisper listings, pocket listings. You really need a trained professional, and I think they will shine in the next couple of years more than ever.
I think it's what drew my mother into the business. She said, I like helping people find the right house for them. And I think she really preferred the buying agent side of the business. I think that some of the best evidence we have that technology is not enough is the fact that Zillow got into the business with Zestimates. That was their first major win. And they had so much confidence in the technology to pick houses, that they started buying houses based on the technology's recommendation and with the technology's recommended price. And they lost a lot of money. And if you look at their track record, they'll say even now that they only get it right in New Canaan, Connecticut. 50% of the time do they get the price right within 10%. So they even admit that they don't know how to price a house as well as an agent in that community. And when I went to Greenwich, and it was early in the business, and I asked the guy who's teaching me the business, I said, we're on North Street in Greenwich. Why is this house worth so much more than that house? And he said, well, that's on the high side of the street, and that's on the low side of the street. I said, are you kidding me? These two houses are next to each other. Does it matter so much? And he said, John, of course, it's everything. And I thought, yeah, I don't know that a computer is going to know what Tom was teaching me that day. So I think you're right. I think that there's a great deal for a value provided by the buyer's agent. And I think AI's got its place, but I don't think AI can make a video as well as I can about my next listing.
I don't think there's any chance that technology is going to replace. I mean, I think it's going to replace some of the systems and some of the processes that have to happen, but the touch and feel of taking someone in and dealing with them and showing them and explaining to them and making them feel comfortable and giving them context and history of, and also what the context of the seller is, what their circumstances are, which could be incredibly unique, or the buyer, and what flexibility there is in financing that people can offer. I mean, it's a myriad of things that there's no chance that a computer could, or AI could replace. I just don't see that ever happening.
I agree.
John, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Scott, I wonder your thoughts about the whole idea, and everybody here, about real estate without borders, in the sense of this business model where teams that say do well in New York are seeing migration into Miami. So they're saying, let's open up and have a presence there, or we're in LA, but let's open up and have a presence in Austin. Do you think long-term that's a viable model? Or, I mean, how can somebody that really knows New York and all the nuances of it really know the same level of nuanced info in Palm Beach? I guess unless they get locals. I mean, do you think that's a flash in the pan kind of expansion model that's not going to prove over the test of time? Or do you think it's going to continue to be real estate without borders and we're going to service our clients no matter where they are?
Well, Sally, I think it works best when they do partner up with the local agent, because when you sort of parachute in and think that you can do it without the help of them, it's a hard lift. And it's not, it doesn't work well because you don't have the historical data and the anecdotal life of the market, and you're just sort of, I found these, let's see them. And I think that's important to decide. And also, what really has fueled a lot of this is the agent's buyer has tended to start the process of saying, hey, can you help me in Miami? Can you help me in LA? Can you help me in the Hamptons? And so they've planted that seed with the agent. And as you know, we've become sort of the family office advisor now, as opposed to just a transactional real estate agent. So I think that makes sense. But
Mhm.
I encourage, and I know that my colleagues do, Don Langdon, Jay Parker, Howard Lorber, all of us, we want you to be successful. We don't want you to just try to put a flag up and not have anyone down there that's local, and refer it, but you can still have your name on it. But if you think you can run back and forth and fly back and forth,
Right.
and it's hard to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a little bit, it's not perceived as being too smart. And I think it's always best to collaborate.
I think that I've been very curious about that as well. The emergence of these super teams that are in many states. I used to think that was the role of Elliman or Brown Harris Stevens or Compass. And so now we're starting to see teams act very independent of their parent agencies. And so I'm also curious, do you think that's going to continue?
Well, I think if you get too big and you lose sort of control of your growth, and you also, if 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 everyone in the team is just doing 1 or 2 deals a year, then it's hard to make a living. And I think I always say it's another mouth to feed, right? I think you have to have a master plan. And I'm not sure how I would feel about getting much bigger when there's such an inventory crunch. I would think about tightening up. And Sally, you said something about, I'm not that big, or we're not this big, but we've got real quality, and we have people that have the track record, and I think that's super important. Big does not necessarily mean what it sounds like it means. I think it's you need to be very careful in a market like this. There's a lot of movement happening because a lot of people have had a tough 18 months, and some of them have had zero business.
You mean from firm to firm?
Well, anyone that's in the business now, no matter where you are, I think it's been, there's some that have had the best years of their lives because this is the kind of market that they really thrive in. But for the most part, I think a lot of people are really happy we're going in this direction now, but they really have had a bad, a slow time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about international. Rarely does a market report come out that doesn't now talk about the foreign buyer and what's the foreign buyer doing and where are the Chinese and what happened to the Russians. When Roberto and I have done a show recently with a couple of shows with Knight Frank. We did one in France. We said, who's buying in France? Oh, it's very funny. They said right after the election, every 4 years, the Americans turn on like a light switch. Right after the election, half of America is disappointed in who they elected, and they all kind of come over to France and start looking around. And I was like, wow. So they said the Russians were buyers, now they're out, and the French are buying. And so talk about the international market. Talk to me for a moment about the Knight Frank partnership. I think it's a very interesting strategy that you chose to partner with one of the dominant brands in the international market, whereas some of your competitors have decided to go over there organically or create so talk to me about the decision behind the Knight Frank partnership. What does it bring you, and how important is the international buyer?
Well, I think originally the international affiliation, or the perception that the firm in the States had an international presence, it happened with the auction houses. And, Christie's, Sotheby's, and, but for the most part, it didn't deliver a lot because it was maybe a couple of brochures in the entryway of the auction houses, wherever you went. But with Knight Frank, we've known them for a long time. I knew them when I was at Corcoran, and they are sort of the best of the best. And this contract that we did with them, this affiliation, is exclusive. So anything that comes to the US from Knight Frank comes to us, and anything we send outside of the US goes to Knight Frank. And
right after the election, we're going to send them a whole bunch of unhappy Americans.
Well, it depends on who's happy. And it's one of those things. I think when we had the golden ticket program in Portugal, and now the Douglas Elliman Knight Frank Wealth Report said that New Zealand was the hot place to buy right now. I think, we'll always have those places, and we'll always have somewhere to go if they're really mad, but somewhere really nice. And I think it's given our agents, and I know, John, you guys have been on the trips, and it really exists. It's not something that's just there to go on paper inside your pitch package. We have those relationships. We can have, at a moment's notice, they can come on a large pitch or something important that is important to us or you, and they really exist, and they really are part of the fabric of the company and part of the of what we are so excited about at Douglas Elliman. So
are we just checking a box, or is it a significant part of the business?
It's
is it a growing part?
Significant and growing. I think, it's funny, we've been waiting for the international buyer to come back into the market here. And of course, now the Russians are having their issues, and the Chinese were having issues with getting money out. But I think we've had so many people within our own country flooding the market. We didn't have room for them anyway. It's not like we lost out on anything. And then we've had in the opposite direction, the dollar's been so strong that people have made that plunge of buying something in Europe or across the pond. And I think that's wonderful, because they used to avoid it so much because it would take so long to get something to be closed and be yours. And I have a friend in Italy who bought a hotel. It took 9 years for them to close on it. They ran the hotel, but it took 9 years to close. So I think that's certainly
that poor broker.
I know, right? It's 1 in a million, but I think now people that are fed up will find something, and you can find great value outside of the U.S., especially in Europe.
I think it's personally important to you because you put out a newsletter on the educating me and all the other brokers. Was it weekly? Every
Monthly. Yeah.
Monthly. Okay. It feels like weekly sometimes. I'm getting a report on what exactly is going on in London from Scott Durkin. And I'm like, okay, I need to know this. And I think that's, you've taught me that I better pay attention to the foreign market.
Well, the foreign market looks, they've got a side eye on New York. And once New York even blinks or sneezes, they start moving. And again, of course, New York is always in the top 3 of the growth cities, or the top cities of the world. And I think that it's very important to know what, the market in London has been stagnant for so many months and maybe over a year. And now it's really starting to move. And, that's great, because if you've been through these cycles before, that these are all the right things that are supposed to be happening. We're the last to go down, we're the first to recover. And so we're feeling that, especially in New York.
I think you did CNBC yesterday and teased the market report, but it's not out yet. So you talk about this New Zealand as household knowledge, but I think you're privy to some secrets in the market report that the rest of us haven't seen yet. Do you want to drop any more bombs on our audience?
Strawberries and lamb.
Strawberries and lamb?
I think that's what New Zealand's famous for, isn't it?
But is New Zealand the new hot luxury property market?
That's what they said. Yeah. And believe it or not. And it's interesting because New Zealand is somewhat remote. If unless you're going to Australia a lot, right? But you get a lot more land and a lot more of what we call the vistas and the wonderful mountains and lifestyle and sports and hiking and fishing and swimming and everything you can imagine. It is a very safe country. Politically, it's very calm in terms of its political activity.
Is that a trend we can draw out of this year's report, that we're going to start to see a flight to safety? What are the rich? One thing I saw you write was 25% of the ultra rich are in the real estate market to buy a house this year. That surprised me. Yeah. New Zealand surprised me. But do you do you then read the tea leaves and say, you know, the trend is in uncertain times to go to safe places and put the money in safe real estate places? Yes.
Well, that could be someone's trend, but if I was in the market now, I would say, let me go out and look in San Francisco, because let's face it, San Francisco is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Do you think this is going to go on much longer? I don't. But I tell you this, the best time to find real estate would be now, because there's never a break in San Francisco real estate prices. You know that it's always ahead of every other city in the country and sometimes in the world. So I think I would look at it differently and say, let me see what's happening and what's not. Where's the bad news? Is there an opportunity there? Because and this is a time. So I'm of the opposite of that, you know. But I think New Zealand is also expensive. So it's 10% higher cost of living in New Zealand than in the US. And
Is it more expensive than Australia?
yes, yeah, Australia is very expensive.
Where is New York City in the cycle now? Is it a bargain? Is it in the trough rising? Where is New York City? Because Roberto, I ask him every week, and but I want your perspective.
Well, I saw it already. So it's Miami, New York, and Los Angeles.
But is New York expensive right now, or do you think it's a bargain?
It's down just a few percentage points. So, you know, we haven't seen it down in a few years. But I think if you have a great agent who knows how to navigate the market, you can get something really nice. And if you're ready to stomach the application of buying in a co-op, you can get something even nicer. And the deals are in the co-ops right now.
I agree.
Right? There's just
I agree.
We have at Douglas Elliman, we have 64 apartments on Park Avenue that are on listings. So we're the #1 agency with Park Avenue listings. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That is a lot.
So where's the great value play? What neighborhoods in New York should I be looking at if I just have a lot of money and I want a great value play if I'm a nervous buyer?
If I was looking, I would look for a co-op in the West Village. I would look co-op on Central Park West, Park Avenue, Fifth Avenue. We just put on the Elliott Irwin apartment at 88 Central Park West, and it sold in a few days. And I toured that with Ann Cupbill, and what a historical masterpiece, but needing a full renovation. And that was the one where Snoopy, that famous photograph of Snoopy going by the children on the window seat.
That's a great apartment. I sold the 11th floor. That's the 9th floor.
Did you?
That's a great apartment.
Wow, what an amazing building. But I think those are sort of the trophy apartments right now. I'm not one for ultra high floors, so I would be, if I was a buyer, I'd be in the pre-war buildings. But I think you can almost look anywhere now if you're up for a co-op and you're up for that sort of application and the board interview. But if you want the new things with the bow on the box already and never lived in, we've got a lot of that and really great stuff.
So we're down to our last minute or so. I'll leave the final question to Roberto, but I'd like you to start thinking, give us your predictions in the last minute that we have.
Well, I think rates will continue to play with us, but I think they're coming down where we want them. And let's not forget it's an election year, so there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of uncertainty, but I think we've got a pent-up demand, we've got lack of inventory. So I think if we can keep moving in the right direction, that people will decide to do something. Sellers that will now be able to sell because they didn't know where they could go now because of the lack of the uncertainty and the interest rates and the other markets. But really, I think the big word of 24 will be inventory, and we need more inventory. That's it. I think that will move the market more than the interest rates. Over 50% of our deals are cash. So there you are.
I agree. I think that you have 1 year to buy in a fair market. After that, it's going to be absolutely insane. Scott, thank you so much.
Thank you both. Thank
It's
you
such
all.
a pleasure to
Kelly.
meet you and everything. So
Thank you.
This is
Same
great.
here. Okay.
I'm bullish on the market. I'm bullish on Elliman. I'm bullish on your strategy, and which is both expanding and connectedness of all the parts. Very exciting time to be you, Scott.
Oh,
Kudos.
it's you too. I'm so glad we're together. Thank
Me
you.
too.
Bye,
Thank you,
guys.
everybody.
take care. Bye-bye.